My husband has worked at the same company for 4 years, and he never, not even once, took me to an event. They're super boring, honey. Just speeches and cold food. This year I insisted so much that he gave in. I bought a blue dress, did my hair, left our daughter with my mom, and we walked into the end of your party, arm in arm. It lasted 6 steps. At the door of the hall before the first greeting, Dante let go of my arm. And with a quick movement, the kind that comes naturally when you've done it 1,000 times, he took off his wedding ring and put it in his pants pocket. I saw it. I saw the ring go into the pocket, and I saw the hand come out empty, and then his boss Don Salvador came over with his hand stretched out, and my husband introduced me with 4 words. This is Bernice, my sister, his sister, 7 years of marriage, a mortgage signed by both of us, and a 4-year-old daughter, who has his exact face and his exact calic. Did I scream in front of 130 people? No. And pay attention to what I did, because everything else comes from that. I shook Don Salvador's hand, smiled with my whole face, and said, "Nice to meet you." "Yes, I'm the sister. Tell me everything about my little brother." He never says anything at home. And I let myself wander through that party doing the only thing sisters do, asking questions. Stay with me. Because in those 2 hours, I found out more about my marriage than in 7 years. First, why didn't I scream? A wife who screams at a company party becomes the next day's gossip. Dante's crazy, jealous wife, and he is all day Monday to give his side of the story in the hallways. A friendly sister, on the other hand, is invisible. Nobody watches their mouth around the sister. You don't scream at liars, my dears. You let them talk. And as I walked between the tables, the pieces of 4 years started falling into place on their own. Dante never tagged me in a photo. He said, "I'm not on social media." His profile picture is a hill with no one in it. His phone is always face down, and 3 end-of-year parties he had to work at. Loose pieces don't seem like anything. That night, someone put them together for me with an appetizer in hand. Let's start with Don Salvador, the boss, delighted with his sister. So nice to meet someone from the family. Dante neglects us. He told us that you all live far away down south and that he's the only one who came here. All far away down south. We live 18 blocks from that company and my mother-in-law 6 blocks away. Then came Fatima from admin. One of those people who talk like they've known you all your life. A gift from heaven for a woman who's investigating. Finally, someone from the family. We always tell him, "Dante, you can't be so alone." Why does he live alone? Right? With the cat. With the cat. My husband who sleeps at home with a 4-year-old girl who climbs into bed with him at 3 o'clock in the morning. At work, he lives alone with a cat. A cat that doesn't exist, just like the South. And that's when Fatima accidentally gave me the detail that isn't gossip, but paperwork. The company had just updated the benefit system, and she herself had entered everyone's data. I have your brother down as easy. Single. No dependents. No dependents. My 4-year-old daughter doesn't exist on any paperwork at that company. And I have my daughter's health insurance card at home that he brought me 2 years ago, saying it was through his work. Keep that detail in mind, because it comes back. And it comes back worse. And before I tell you the part that changed the night, let's go back to the hall because at the time of the toast, she appeared. I had seen her before without knowing. Brunette, green dress, laughing at the purchasing table, looking over at us twice when we arrived. And when Dante went to the bathroom, she crossed the room straight toward me with 2 glasses in her hand and said the phrase that opened up the ground beneath me. "You must be Bernice. I'm Jima. I really wanted to meet you. Seriously, really wanted to meet the sister. You all know what that means." We sat down and in 20 minutes that charming, nervous woman told me my own life backwards. That they've been together for 1.5 years. That she knows he snores and hates seafood. That they were at the coast over the long weekend in October. The same weekend Dante took a mandatory course and I stayed home with Nina with a 104 fever. She showed me photos and in one of them leaning against the hotel wall was my suitcase. The gray one with the red ribbon I put on it to recognize it. And then she said the phrase that made me realize that there wasn't one deceived woman there but 2. I know he's been separated for 2 years. He told me everything. that his ex won't let him see the little girl, that she makes his life miserable, that the divorce is stalled by her. That's why he never introduced me to the family yet. But he wanted to start with you. He says you're the only one who understands him. Separated for 2 years. The ex who won't let him see the little girl. The stalled divorce. The ex makes him breakfast every morning. Himina. The ex has the pediatrician appointment on Tuesday. And the little girl who won't let him see her asks him every night to sing her the crocodile song. I didn't say anything to her yet. I smiled at her. I took her hand and asked her one single question. The one that decided everything that happened next. Himina, do you guys have anything signed together? Anything with the bank? Her face lit up. Poor thing. Yes, we're about to buy an apartment. We signed the loan 3 months ago. It's small, but it's ours. We move in March. They signed a loan 3 months ago. 3 months ago at my house, my husband made me sign some mortgage refinancing papers. Honey, to lower the payment. I signed without looking because you don't read what the man who sleeps next to you puts in front of you. It was in that second at that table that I stopped being sad and started being prepared. Dante came back from the bathroom and saw us together. I had never seen a man walk so fast with such a pale face. He grabbed my elbow. He apologized with an "excuse me, family matters." He took me to the hallway. And there, finally, he spoke to me like a husband. What are you doing? I'm begging you. Please don't make a scene here. It's complicated. I'll explain everything at home. And I, my dears, with a calm I didn't know I had inside, answered him. I'm not going to make a scene, Dante. I'm your sister. Sisters don't make scenes. Sisters make toasts. That night, I asked for it in a bathroom hallway, and it arrived. 10 minutes later, Don Salvador went up on stage and closed his speech the way all bosses do, thanking the families who join us, who are our true support. And then with the applause still ringing, I raised my hand and asked for the microphone as a family member. Nobody denies the microphone to the emotional sister. I went up 130 people. I spoke calmly without trembling. Good evening. I'm Dante's sister. I want to thank you for taking such good care of him these 4 years. Truly. And since we're all together, I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to the rest of the family that nobody knows. I took out my phone and held the screen up to the room, turning it slowly so it reached the back tables. This is Nina. She's 4 years old. She's Dante's daughter. And this other photo is from a wedding 7 years ago. The groom is him. The bride is me. There was no screaming or booing. There was something better. That low hum of 130 people doing the exact same math at the exact same time. Fatima's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Don Salvador adjusted his glasses, as if the problem was his glasses, and Himina at the purchasing table covered her mouth with both hands. Sorry, I added. I meant to say the sister with a ring. Oh, right. That's in my little brother's right pants pocket if anyone wants to check. Thank you for the party, Don Salvador. The food was better than he had told me. I returned the microphone. I got off the stage and I walked to the exit between the tables. In a silence you could hold in your hand while my husband behind me started a sentence he never finished. With her mascara running and she caught up with me before I opened the car door, I expected insults, blame, anything but what she did. She grabbed my arm and said with a trembling voice, "Wait, listen to me. If you're the wife, if you guys are really married, then the loan we signed 3 months ago has a huge problem because when the bank asked for collateral, he brought in the paperwork for a property. I saw the folder, Bones, I saw the address, and I'm almost sure that house is where you live with your daughter. My house, my mortgage, the papers I signed without reading to lower the payment." Jamia wiped her face and added one last thing that left me breathless. And there's something else. I'm not the first. Before me, there was another one at the downtown branch. She quit in March. Everyone here knows why she quit except you. And everything that came out of that parking lot is so big. I told it all separately. Because it doesn't fit here, even folded up. What the paper I signed to lower the payment really said that when the lawyer read it out loud, I had to sit on the floor of her office. The woman from the downtown branch, the one who quit in March. That when we found her, She told us a story that made mine look like the mild chapter, my daughter's health insurance card. What was it really? And why did my whole body shake when the lawyer explained to me what that no dependence meant? What the company did the following Monday? Because Don Salvador didn't just let the party slide. And the final conversation with Dante with his suitcases in the hallway. The car keys were already in my hand when Jimena finished talking. My car, our mortgage, my house. I drove home alone. Dante didn't follow me to the car. I think he already understood that the conversation he owed me wasn't the kind you have in a company parking lot in a blue dress. I called my mom from the car. Nina was already asleep on the couch with a cartoon still running. I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes. I didn't tell her anything else because if I had opened my mouth about one single detail, I would have pulled over on the side of the highway and cried until my throat gave out and I needed to arrive steady. I needed Nina to see a calm face. She asked, "How was the party?" "Fine, Mom." Cold food, like he always said. I picked up my daughter, put her in her car seat, and drove home. She smelled like shampoo and sleep. And I talked to her the whole way, the way you do with 4-year-olds when they're half awake. "You know what we're going to do tomorrow, Nina? I'm going to make you your pancakes. The ones with the banana." "Yes, Mama." With the little faces. "Yes, baby." With the little faces. I walked into my house with her in my arms. I put her in her bed. I covered her up. And I stood there in her doorway for a long time looking at that cowlick, his exact cowlick. And I made myself a promise in that hallway that I'm not going to put into words here because that promise is between me and the 4 walls of that house. That, as I was finding out, wasn't entirely mine anymore. Dante arrived 2 hours later. I was sitting at the kitchen table. No TV, no phone, just the kitchen light and a glass of water I hadn't touched. He came in. He looked at me. And for a man who had just watched his wife go up on stage in front of 130 people and announce a marriage he was hiding, he looked surprisingly composed. That's the thing about people who've been lying for a long time. They recover faster than you expect because they've already rehearsed the version they're going to give you. He sat down across from me. And you know what the first word was? Bernice. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I'll explain my name." Like the word itself was an argument. I didn't say anything. He said it was complicated, that he'd made mistakes, that things at home had gotten cold between us, and that he wasn't justifying himself, just explaining. That Jimena didn't mean what I thought she meant. That the apartment, the loan, all of that was going to be sorted out. He just hadn't figured out how yet. And pay close attention to this part, because it tells you everything about the kind of man we're dealing with. He said, "I never stopped loving you." I still said nothing. He talked for 11 minutes. I counted because when someone is lying to your face across your own kitchen table in a house you're not sure is yours anymore, time starts doing strange things. 11 minutes of careful words, none of them the right ones. Then he stopped and I said, "I need to see the papers I signed in September." His face changed. That's the only way I can describe it. Not guilty, not scared, just changed. Like something behind his eyes quietly rearranged itself. He said he'd get them, that they were in the office, that it was nothing, just the refinancing. I was worrying about nothing. I told him to bring them the next morning. Then I pointed to the guest bedroom and told him to sleep there with the door closed and that I was going to sleep in Nina's room. And he did it. He went without arguing because a man who has been running 2 lives for a year and a half knows when to retreat. He's had practice. I lay down next to my daughter and I didn't sleep. I just watched her breathe. The next morning, I called a lawyer before Dante woke up, a woman a colleague of mine had used for her own divorce 2 years ago. I want to stress something here because people always ask me how I stayed so calm through all of this. I wasn't calm. I was running on a kind of cold anger that feels like calm from the outside. There is a difference. Calm is peaceful. What I had was a very clear, very cold understanding that if I got loud, I would lose. And I had already lost enough. The lawyer's name is Laura. She asked me to come in that afternoon and bring whatever documents I had at home. Any papers with both our signatures, insurance, bank documents, the mortgage folder. I brought everything I could find. She opened it on her desk, and for about 20 minutes she read while I sat across from her and watched her face. Lawyers are trained to keep their expression steady. Laura did not keep her expression steady. She stopped at one page. Read it again. Set it down. Picked it up. Read it a third time. Then she looked at me and said, "Bernice, did you read this before you signed it?" I told her the truth. No, I trusted him. She turned the paper around and started explaining in that careful, deliberate way lawyers use when they are choosing every single word because what they're about to say is very, very bad. What I had signed in September was not a refinancing. It was a partial equity transfer. In plain terms, a legal mechanism that repositioned Dante as the primary holder of the property and moved my name into a secondary conditional capacity. Buried in the fine print, in language no person without a law degree would catch on a quick read, were clauses that allowed him to leverage the property independently under certain conditions. The loan he and Jimena had signed 3 months ago, the one for their apartment, had used our house as collateral. Our house, my daughter's house, the house I paid half the mortgage on for 7 years. I had signed the paper that made all of it possible. Laura watched me read it through to the end. Then she said quietly, "We have grounds to challenge this. The signature was obtained under false pretenses, but I have to be honest with you. This is going to take time. The first thing we need to do right now is freeze any further transactions on that property before he moves again." I sat in that chair. I heard every word she said. I took notes on my phone. I thanked her. I shook her hand. I walked out to the street, and then I sat down on the curb outside her office, right there on the sidewalk in my coat with the folder on my knees, because my legs simply stopped working. Not from sadness, from the specific physical shock of understanding the full scale of what I had been walking through without ever knowing. 7 years, thousands of ordinary mornings. Coffee made, school bags packed, bills split down the middle. And underneath all of it, a structure I hadn't seen, built carefully, beam by beam, with my own signature on every one. A woman walking by stopped and asked if I was all right. I looked up and said, "Yes, thank you. I just needed a minute." She nodded and walked on. And I sat there thinking, that's the sentence of the year, isn't it? I just need a minute. I got up off that curb because I still had to deal with the health insurance card. The one in my wallet in Nina's name. The one Dante had brought home 2 years ago saying it was through his work benefits. The card that according to Fatima and admin couldn't possibly exist because at that company my daughter didn't exist. No dependents, not one. I needed to find out what that card really was, who was actually paying for it, and why. And the answer to those 3 questions when it came is when I had to sit down on a different floor in a different office and remind myself out loud to breathe. But before that, there was Monday because Don Salvador, the man who spent an entire evening believing his top employee had a charming, talkative sister, did not in fact just go home after the party and forget what he saw. And what he did that Monday morning is the reason the rest of this story goes the way it does. Don Salvador called Dante into his office at 9:17 on Monday morning. I know the exact time because Fatima texted me. Yes, Fatima from admin, the woman who talks like she's known you all her life, who had accidentally handed me the most important piece of the puzzle at a party with an appetizer in hand. Fatima texted me at 9:18 with 4 words. He just went in. I hadn't asked her to. She did it on her own because there are people in this world who have an innate, unshakable sense of justice, and Fatima is one of them. She had spent the entire weekend feeling sick about the fact that she herself had listed my daughter as non-existent in that benefit system. She hadn't known, but she felt it anyway. That text from Fatima was the first sign that I wasn't doing this alone. What happened in that office, I only know from what Dante told me later and from what Laura found out through official channels. But I can tell you the shape of it. Don Salvador is 63 years old. He built that company from 2 employees and a rented room. He has a daughter, a son-in-law, and 3 grandchildren whose photos sit on his desk. He is not a man who watches a wife go up on his stage in front of his entire company and name herself and name her daughter, and then goes home and has a quiet Sunday and comes back Monday as if nothing happened. He called Dante in. He closed the door and he asked him directly the way men of that generation ask things man to man with no witnesses, what exactly is going on with your family. I don't know what Dante said in that room, but I know what came out of it. HR opened a formal review that same afternoon. Not for the marriage, not for Jimena. Those aren't work matters. For the benefit system, for the fact that an employee had declared himself single with no dependents and was receiving a compensation package calculated accordingly, when he in fact had a wife and a dependent child, which under the company structure entitled those dependents to benefits he had collected in their place and redirected somewhere else. Redirected where exactly was what the review was going to find out. And that's when Nina's health insurance card entered the official record. Laura called me Tuesday afternoon. She'd been on the phone with the insurance company that morning using the card number I had photographed and sent her the night before. "I want you to sit down," she said. I was already sitting. I had been sitting in that kitchen for 2 days. The card in my wallet, the one with Nina's name on it, the one Dante had brought home and told me was through his work benefits, was not a company benefit. It was a private policy paid monthly out of a bank account I had never seen. An account that, Laura explained carefully, had been opened 4 years ago in Dante's name alone, into which a portion of his salary had been quietly diverted every month since the beginning. For years? The entire time he had worked at that company. That account had paid for the insurance. It had also paid, Laura had found already, for a gym membership at a gym 20 blocks from our house that neither I nor Nina had ever set foot in, for a streaming service registered to an email address I didn't recognize. And for 12 hotel nights across 3 years, all in cities where Dante had told me he had mandatory training courses. The money was his. I won't pretend it wasn't. He earned it. But the account's existence, built with that level of precision over that length of time, wasn't the move of a man who made a mistake. It was the move of a man who was constructing an exit beam by beam while also maintaining the house he hadn't left yet. He needed me functional. He needed the property. He needed Nina's name on something. So, the pretense held at home. He just didn't need us on any paperwork that might complicate the other life he was building. I put the phone down on the table and I opened the calendar on my phone and counted back 4 years. 4 years ago, Nina was 3 months old. Jimena called me Wednesday. I hadn't expected that. She said she'd gotten my number from someone at the office. She wasn't going to say who, and that if I told her to never contact me again, she would completely understand, but that she needed to talk to me, not to fight, not to defend herself. She said, "I think we got played by the same person, and I think I know something you don't." We met Thursday at a coffee shop near Laura's office. I brought the folder. She brought a bag full of printed emails. She's 29. She has the kind of face that makes you immediately understand why Dante chose her for his story. Open, earnest, the kind of person who doesn't assume people lie because she doesn't lie herself. She had been crying for 4 days and was doing her best not to show it. I recognized the effort because I had been making the same one since Friday. She pushed the printed emails across the table. They were from a woman named Rocio. She had worked at the company's downtown branch. She had quit in March. Jimena said she reached out to me last year through Instagram. She said she had seen photos of Dante and me at an event, and she recognized him. She said she needed to tell me something. I thought she was an ex trying to cause trouble, so I blocked her. I regret that more than almost anything I've ever done. I picked up the emails, 3 messages, each more urgent than the last. I didn't read them at the coffee shop. I read them in my car alone 40 minutes later, because whatever they contained, I wanted to receive without a face in front of me watching me do it. What they said was this. Rocio had been with Dante for 2 years before him. She had also believed the story. The ex who made his life miserable, the stalled divorce, the little girl he wasn't allowed to see. She had also been told he was getting everything sorted out. She had also waited. And then she had found something, not at a party, at a hospital. She had gone in for a minor procedure, the kind where they ask for emergency contact information, and she had given Dante's name. The admissions nurse running the system check had paused and said, "We already have a file for this contact. It appears he's listed as next of kin for another patient." Rocio had asked one more question quietly. The way you ask something when you already know the answer and you just need the world to confirm it. Is the other patient current or from years ago? The nurse had looked at the screen and said, "Current." Updated 8 months ago. Rocio quit in March. She sent those 3 emails to Jimena hoping to stop her from going through what she herself went through. Jimena had blocked her, and now we were all 3 in the same story. Different chapters, same author. I put the emails on the passenger seat and sat in my car for a long time watching people pass on the sidewalk with their coffees and their bags and their ordinary Thursday afternoons. And here is where I need to take you back. Back to something I mentioned in the beginning because I said it quickly and moved on. And I need you to understand now what it actually meant. I told you that Dante never took me to a company event. For years, I said. He told me they were boring. Cold food, speeches, nothing worth my time. But here is what I didn't tell you because I didn't know yet that it mattered. 2 years ago, when he brought home Nina's insurance card and put it on the kitchen table, I was nursing her in the living room. And I remember with a specific clarity you only have about moments that later turn out to matter that I looked at that card and said, "Finally, I've been asking you about this for months." And he said, "I know. I got it sorted. I'm sorry it took so long." And then I said, almost as an afterthought, that I should come to one of these events sometime just to put a face to the people he talked about. And he smiled. That smile I now understand completely and said, "They're really not worth your time, Bernice. You'd be bored in 20 minutes. I said, "Okay." I sat back down on the couch with our daughter and said, "Okay." And the card he sat on that table, the one I put in my wallet and used without a second thought for 2 years, was not his company taking care of us. It was paid out of an account I had never seen, funded quietly for 4 years, built to keep a parallel life running without it ever touching mine. He brought it home not because he was finally taking care of us. He brought it home to keep me from asking questions. A woman who feels provided for doesn't look too hard. A wife with her daughter's name on an insurance card in her wallet doesn't insist on coming to the party. And I had carried that card for 2 full years without wondering why. After months of not getting it, he had suddenly been so quick to hand it to me. The card was a door closing. I just hadn't heard the lock. That afternoon, I met with Laura. I laid out everything. Fatima's texts, Jimena's emails, Rocio's 3 messages, the private account, the 12 hotel nights. She listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she set her pen down, which Laura never does, and looked at me across her desk. She said, "Bernice, what I thought was a property dispute with a difficult divorce is now something considerably larger, and the way we move from here has to be precise. It has to be quiet, and it has to be fast, because he doesn't know the full scope of what we have, and that window will not stay open." I looked back at her. I said, "Tell me exactly what to do." She told me every step. I followed each one. Nothing made noise. Nothing gave him a signal, because the only advantage I had left was that Dante still believed he could manage the situation. He thought the party was the worst of it. He thought what I had was a broken heart and one dramatic moment on a stage. He didn't know about Laura. He didn't know about Rocio's emails. He didn't know that Jimena had switched sides. And he did not know what else Laura had found buried inside those benefits records. The thing that made her go completely still for 30 seconds before she could speak. That part comes in the next chapter. And that part is the reason he was standing in our hallway with suitcases. The detail buried in the benefits records that made Laura go silent for 30 seconds was this. Every company trip Dante had taken in the past 3 years, every mandatory training course, every regional conference had been submitted as a business expense and reimbursed by the company per diem rates, hotel receipts, travel. The company had paid for every single one of those 12 nights. The same 12 nights that Rocio's emails, Jimena's photos, and the timestamps on a hotel loyalty account Laura had subpoenaed told a very different story about. He hadn't just hidden 2 lives. He had built one of them to his employer. Laura filed the emergency property freeze on Friday morning. By noon, Dante received an automatic notification from the bank that a legal hold had been placed on the mortgage. I know he received it because he called me at 12:14 and said nothing for 3 seconds before he spoke. "Bernice, what did you do?" Not a question. A statement with my name at the front of it, the same way he'd used it at the kitchen table. Like my name was a tool he kept reaching for. I said, "Talk to your lawyer, Dante." He didn't have one yet. That was his first miscalculation. He had spent the 10 days since the party trying to manage me, manage Jimena, manage whatever conversation he assumed Don Salvador had already forgotten. And he had not yet called a lawyer because men who have been in control for a long time are always one step slow to understand when the control is gone. I hung up. The HR review concluded the following Tuesday. I wasn't there. Laura got the summary through official channels 2 days later. Don Salvador, to his credit, had been thorough. The expense audit covered 31 months. The total reimbursed for what were documented as professional trips cross-referenced against the hotel records Laura's subpoena had pulled came to a number I'm not going to say out loud because honestly it still makes me short of breath. It was not a small number. It was the kind of number that changes the category of what you're dealing with from a personal failure to a legal one. Don Salvador placed Dante on administrative suspension pending the outcome of the review. Pending meaning not yet fired, but suspended meaning not coming back to that building, not accessing company systems, not speaking to colleagues while the process ran. Fatima texted me when he cleared his desk. She sent one word, done. That same week, Jimena met with the bank alone. She had consulted her own lawyer, a friend of her older sister, who had looked at the loan documents and confirmed what Laura had already told me from our side. The collateral Dante had provided for the apartment loan, our house, had been transferred into a position he did not fully have the legal authority to leverage given the fraud in the original equity transfer. The loan itself was at risk of being voided, which meant the apartment purchase fell apart, which meant Jimena was left with nothing except the year and a half she had given to a man who had introduced her to no one in his real life and told her his ex was the obstacle. She withdrew from the loan. She did it quietly and without drama, which told me everything I needed to know about who she actually was underneath the situation she'd been placed in. She sent me a message afterward, just one line. I'm sorry I didn't listen to Rocio. I wrote back. Neither of us listened to the right things soon enough. That's on him, not on us. Laura served Dante the separation papers on Thursday afternoon. He was at his mother's apartment, 6 blocks from the company, 2 blocks from where he had told Don Salvador for 4 years that he was alone in the world. His mother called me that evening. She was crying. She said she didn't know. And I believe her because I know what it looks like to not know. I had worn that same face for 7 years. I told her Nina was fine, that Nina would always be able to see her, that none of what had happened was her fault, and none of it changed what she was to her granddaughter. She cried harder. I stayed on the phone with her for 20 minutes. Then I put Nina to bed. I read her the Crocodile Song, which is actually a book, not a song, but she calls it the song because there is one page where you're supposed to sing, and she makes me sing it every time. I sang it. She fell asleep with her hand on my wrist, and I went to the kitchen and I made coffee and I waited. He came at 9:40. He knocked, which he had never done before at his own front door. And I think that small gesture told me more about where we were than anything that had been said in the previous 2 weeks. He knocked because he already knew somewhere underneath all of it that this wasn't his door anymore in the way it had been. I opened it. He was standing in the hallway with 2 suitcases and the face of a man who has run out of versions of the story. No prepared words, no careful opening, just his name for me and the particular exhaustion of someone who has been holding too many things for too long and finally has nothing left in his hands. Bernice. I stepped back and let him in. And we had the only honest conversation we had ever had in 7 years of marriage. He set the suitcases down just inside the door. He didn't wheel them further. Just set them there at the threshold. Like he wasn't sure how much space he was still allowed to take up. He looked older than he had at the party. 10 days older, but in the way that certain 10 days are worth years. He said, I'm not going to ask you to forgive me tonight. I said, good, because tonight isn't about that. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same chair, and he told me the truth. Not all of it, I'm sure, because people like Dante don't give you everything at once, even when they're broken. But enough. He said he had been afraid for a long time. That he wasn't enough for the life we had built. That instead of saying so, he had built a second life alongside it where the fear didn't follow him yet. That he knew how that sounded. That he wasn't asking me to understand it, just to know it. I listened without interrupting. And when he finished, I said only one thing. I know you love Nina. He looked at me. His eyes did what eyes do when someone says the one thing they were afraid you wouldn't say. I said that is the only reason this conversation is happening at all. Everything else, the property, the fraud, the company, Jimena, Rocio, that is handled. Laura handles that. What I need to know tonight is what you are going to be for your daughter from here. Because she doesn't know what her father did. She only knows her father. And that version of you is the only version she has ever seen. Don't destroy it. He nodded, and for the first time in all of it, I believed him. He picked up his suitcases and he walked out. The divorce was finalized 7 months later. The property fraud was resolved through the civil case Laura filed, which unwound the equity transfer I had signed in September without reading. The company concluded its review, and I won't detail the outcome except to say that Don Salvador, a man who built something from nothing and takes that personally, did not let it pass quietly. Jimena moved to another city. She sent me a message on Nina's birthday 3 months after everything ended. She said she hoped we were well. I said we were. I meant it. Rocio, I met only once in Laura's office where she gave a formal statement. She was calm and precise and asked for nothing. When it was over, she shook my hand at the door and said, I'm glad you got up on that stage. I think about that a lot. Nina turned 5 in April. We had the party at my mother's house. There were 12 children, a piñata that refused to break for 20 minutes, and a cake with a cat on it because she went through a phase. At one point, she climbed into my lap in the middle of all the noise and said, Mama, are you happy? I looked at that colic. And I told her, yes, for real. Here is what I want to leave you with. I've been asked many times since that night why I didn't scream. Why I shook Don Salvador's hand and smiled and played the sister for 2 full hours while my marriage was dissolving in real time around an appetizer table. My answer is always the same because screaming gives the liar the stage. When you scream, everyone looks at you. They remember your face breaking. They remember the scene. And he gets to spend Monday morning in the hallways being the reasonable one, the sad one, the one who tried. When you stay quiet, they look at him. You don't fight people who lie to you. You document them. You build the case. You find the Fatimas of the world. The Jimenas who finally switched sides. The Rocios who tried to warn someone and weren't heard until it was too late. You call a lawyer named Laura before your husband wakes up. You sit on a curb outside an office building and you breathe until your legs work again, and then you stand up. Because here is what 4 years of invisible marriage and 1 night in a blue dress taught me. The most dangerous woman in the room is not the one who screams. It's the one who smiles, shakes your hand, says, nice to meet you, and starts asking questions. Be her. I'm Bernice and I'm fine.